you guys did introductions and so do you guys own the business and run it, all three of you? Okay, I just try to get a feel for the room sometimes to see if someone's like a key man running the business or if you're actually owners. So what I like to do when I start is really pretty much talk about when you are an owner of a business. Typically, what people think when they think of an owner of a business is that you're uber wealthy, that you call all the shots, right? Everyone works for you, you're in control. Right. But the reality is, most of the time, the exact opposite. You work a ton of hours, you work your butt off, right? Nothing ever really seems to get done unless you're the one doing it, and everybody else seems to get paid first. And if you can relate, and you guys are nodding, so I know that you can, it can be exhausting. But you probably have heard this statistic too, but there's like 85% of all new businesses fail within the first 5 years of starting. And I just recently read another statistic that said of those that make it past 5 years, half of them fail within the next 5. So you're looking at close to a 90% failure rate within the first 10 years of opening a business. So it makes you stop and think, why in the world would anyone dream about owning their own business, right? And I think the answer is twofold. I think first of all is you don't know what you don't know. So entrepreneurs, I love them. They are go-getters. They're tenacious and they're dreamers and they're hard workers and they jump in with both feet and they think, this is great, this is awesome, right? They don't know that there's this super high failure rate and they don't know that there's what the mistakes are that cause that failure rate or that they're gonna make some of these mistakes. And I think the second part is that business ownership does allow the wealth and the personal freedom that people want. Problem is that a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start their business, are experts at what their companies do, but they're not experts in business growth. And they don't know that there's a formula for building a company to get the results that they want, and they have to follow that formula to achieve that. So what they end up doing is working their tails off, working a ton of hours, and end up maybe within those first 5 years throwing in the towel out of frustration or exhaustion, or they run out of assets or resources like time, money, energy, spouse support, whatever it is. Or they just kind of plateau and they work really, really hard, but they end up feeling like the business owns them instead of them owning the business. And so I have experienced this. I know this firsthand. I'm Danette Grau Kohrs. Judy invited me to speak today, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I am the founder and managing partner of Trinity Strategic Growth Solutions, and I am the co-developer of a business growth and improvement program called Build It to Grow. But I'm a growthologist as well, which basically means that I love studying the art and science of business growth. But the thing that I'm most proud of is I'm third generation entrepreneur. So I grew up in a family-owned business. My grandparents and my parents both owned full retail bakeries in the 50s through the 80s. So I've got some fun photos for you guys right there. That is my grandparents' bakery on Chippewa, right smack dab across the street from Ted Drew's. So we had the Ted Drew's account. So if you got a chocolate fudge sundae, we had the brownie at the bottom. If you got a strawberry shortcake something or other, it was our shortcake at the bottom. So we had that account for a long, long time. But my mom recently found this picture and I just thought it was super cool. So it's on my screensaver now. But that is my grandparents' bakery. And then in the 80s, my dad left the family business. Because if any of you are involved in family businesses, you know that can be hard. It's a whole nother dynamic that's involved with that, right? So he left, he bought his own place. So this is a little newspaper clip in Warson Woods, which is where they bought their bakery, that kind of showed when they bought that and opened it up. So this is me, the short little one right here in the back. And these are my younger sisters. And to give you a little bit of a timestamp, I already told you it was the 80s, but they're holding their Cabbage Patch dolls. So that'll tell you what's going on right there. So my dad would take me in to work with him when I was about 9 years old. On Saturday mornings, he'd drag me out of bed at like 4:30 in the morning, because that's when bakers live. Like they work from 4 to noon. So I am not a morning person. He scarred me right then and there. I hate mornings with a passion. So he'd drag me into work. But that's when my entrepreneurial education began, because I would go in, and at the age of 9, I ate more than I did any work, really. But then over the years, I started doing all the crap jobs, because that's what you do to your kid when they work. You make them do all the jobs that you don't want to really make your other employees do. So that's what I did for years and years. But I also developed a very strong work ethic doing that. So I worked with my family. And then when I graduated high school, I went to college and I got a degree in business. And I had my option in marketing and advertising and promotion and communications. And then I went to work for small businesses and I ran their business development departments. And I did that for about 10 years, and I realized and saw some trends and patterns. Like all these privately owned small companies kind of have the same struggles and kind of go through the same processes. So in 1999, I started Trinity, and I started automating marketing systems for companies. And back 20 years ago, that was pioneering that. Like, everybody's automated now, their sales and marketing, but it wasn't then. We used computers to structure and make sure that you did things consistently within your marketing and sales. And over the next decade or so, I invested in a couple of franchise businesses, and I started to kind of sit back and I saw some patterns and what works, what doesn't, what mistakes are common, what do you do in what order. And I kind of put together this formula or this system. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I want to share this with other entrepreneurs so it doesn't have to be so hard. Like, you don't have to take decades to learn this through trial and error. So that's when I started to build this program called Build It to Grow. But that's what I want to talk about today, all right? Because instead of an entrepreneur working their tail off and spinning their wheels and then throwing in the towel because they're exhausted, or feeling like the business owns it themselves, I want to show you kind of the foundations of what that formula is. So that's what I'm going to go into today. Yes, ma'am?
Who came up with that saying?
That was the newspaper's headline.
Okay.
So it was a little newspaper clip. Okay. So it was in black and white too. Like, is your publication all in color, Judy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, that kind of timestamps it too. But that was kind of it. Because my grandparents' bakery, if I go back, that was what they were talking about, the old business know-how, because the Grau pastries had been on Chippewa since the 50s, and this was the 80s. So he had 30 years, his family did, in the bakery business, and now he was starting a new business in Warson Woods. Or he'd actually acquired one that already existed. He wasn't starting a new location, but bought one from another family. So, all right, so that's what I'm going to do. But before we get started, if you guys want to jot down this text number, the slides for this presentation, if you would like them to be emailed to you, you can just text the acronym BI2G, which stands for Build It to Grow. You can text that to 314-300-0378. And the PDF that will come should be a form, so you can actually type your notes right into that. But if you guys had a little smart device or something right now, you could have it pop up and send it to you. But just type that. All you have to do is type BI2G, and it will send you a note back, it should, and say, what's your name and your email, so that we can email it to you. So just try to make it real simple. All right? So I'm going to jump in and start by talking about what an ideal business should look like. Well, first of all, it grows easily. It just means it's consistent and it flows, and it's kind of does it without thinking about it too much. But it also doesn't have a lot of cash flow problems, which means that there's more revenues coming in than there are expenses, right? Sometimes you might have some kinks, maybe because of large inventory purchases or some cash outlays that you have to do ahead of time. But most of the time, there's a reserve of money to pay if any ebbs and flows come in, dips in sales, or if there's anything, unexpected expenses that come up. You have that. They also operate smoothly, which means everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And it kind of happens the way it's supposed to happen. Not a lot of fires, things don't fall through the cracks, there's not a lot of mistakes, things are going well. Whoops, well, that's not right. And it's controllable. And what controllable means is that you can turn up and generate more business if you want, because you decide. It's like you have a marketing machine that you turn up if you want more business, you turn it down if you have too much. Now, a lot of times people will kind of stop me right there and go, too much business? How can that be a problem? That can't be a problem. But actually it can, because I see more businesses struggle and fail and have some issues because they grow too fast and they're not ready for it, than just for plateauing and not growing at all. So that's a huge one. Here's a couple more. Consistent and increasing profits, which means you know what's coming before. It's not like you get to the end of the year and you're doing your tax return and you're like, how much did I make this year? You know it regularly. And the longer that the owner owns the business, the more wealthier they become. And there's little or no day-to-day involvement of the owner. This is what the ideal business looks like. So it can operate whether you're on vacation or not. I was just talking to a business owner the other day who went to Cancun for a week, the month of December, which is great because it was cold here and snowing. But she said she got 100 phone calls while she was on vacation. 100 phone calls. So she definitely wants to work on this part of her business right now. And she's developed some things, but it's not quite there yet, obviously. So you want it so that that can happen without you. And then it's attractive to investors. One of the reasons the ideal business is attractive and can be sold, which is the next one, at a premium price, is because all of those other things are in place, that the profitability is consistent, that it can happen without the owner. Investors don't want to buy jobs, they want to buy businesses, and they want to buy cash flow. So that's what you want your business to be, because you want to think of it as an income producing asset, not as a job or an income level. And that's how you get to that other side of what the ideal business looks like versus one that owns you. All right? So.
Hey Mark, excuse me, I'm on my way, 3768.
Can you say that one more time?
Yes, ma'am.
Talking about the investors.
Mm-hmm.
So you wanted to where all of those things are in place so that they would be more interested in
Right.
planning.
Investors will look for businesses, and I'll talk a little bit about this. I'm going to try to go back a little bit, that have these things that I've just kind of outlined. I spent about 10 years in my career working with a client in mergers and acquisitions. So that's part of where I built all of this, and part of that, when I said I stepped back and I looked at what worked and what didn't, and one of the reasons I spent so much time with that merger and acquisition client, not just automating, when that's where my foot got in the door, was automating their marketing processes, but then she's like, hey, come do the merger and acquisition side of the business with me. I think you'd be really good at it. And I said, all right, I'm intrigued, because I knew how to grow a business through organic activity, marketing, and your traditional stuff. But a lot of companies grow through acquisition, which means I'll go buy your company because you're similar to mine, right? I'm a day spa and I want to gobble up day spas all over the country, and I'll buy yours because you've got a client base, right? So they'll do that and they'll grow that way. Right? So there's two different ways to grow your business, but investors look for a certain kind of company that they buy, and they have all of these things. It's growing consistently. They don't have a lot of cash flow problems. If you're not profitable, very few people are going to want to buy your business, and they're looking at your financials to determine that. So that's where this shift comes in. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but again, this is kind of just the beginnings of what that's all about. All right? So, and then again, those investors that are looking to buy businesses don't want one that needs you to run it, because they're not buying you. When they buy you out, you're leaving and going away. So if the business is all dependent upon you and everything you do on a day-to-day basis and can't run without you, there's not a lot of value there. Does that make sense?
I was just asking, long story short, my mother owned the business. She recently passed, so I inherited the business. But I've constantly been getting people trying to get me to sell the business.
Okay.
So.
Okay, yeah, and that's something we can talk about a little bit offline if you like.
It requires little directing.
All right, so here's the brutal truth, because we looked at what an ideal business should look like, but here's what it really looks like for the majority of businesses. 85%, as I mentioned before, die or don't make it past 5 years. And 10% of them survive. And this is basically those businesses where the owner is working a lot of hours and maintaining the status quo, but then they run into a lot of health issues because they just work constantly over time, right? Because they start to become exhausted. And they can't get away, or when they do go on vacation, they don't really get any time off because they got 100 phone calls over a 7-day period of time. And then if you're doing the math, that leaves about 5% that really thrive and hit that ideal business that we're talking about, right? And my family's business was a lot like the Survive. I mean, they had been doing it for 40 years, but my dad worked a ton of hours, right? So he just was basically keeping the business status quo. He wasn't that business owner who stepped back and let the business run itself, and he was on a boat at the Lake of the Ozarks or down in Marco Island or somewhere like that. That was not my family, right? My dad was a workhorse and worked a ton. All right, so what's the difference? What's the difference between these businesses that thrive, the 5%, and those that are not? And the biggest thing is that the business owners are running their business, they're operating it, they're not working on it, they're working in it, if you've ever heard that phrase before. That's the biggest difference between them. So let's break that down a little bit, because there's two pieces to kind of transitioning over to that thriving business. And the first one is knowledge. It's understanding what you need to know and what you need to do. And then the second one is taking action, right? Doing something with that. But there's a couple of problems, because you kind of think, why? Well, that seems easy enough. Why not just learn what you need to do and then just do it, right? So there's a couple of problems behind that. And the first one is that they haven't learned how, right? So you're in a painting business. I've tried to paint before. It doesn't look very good, right? There's a skill set to it, correct? And same thing, you started a massage business and you went to school to learn how to do massages, right? My husband, when we were first married, I'd be like, I had a lot of tension in my neck. I'd say, rub my neck. So here's what he'd do while we were watching TV. And it would just tick me off, right? It just make me mad. I'm like, don't even bother, right? So not that he has your skill level whatsoever, but then he got a few actual massages from a professional such as yourself. His quality of massage went up significantly. And he even bought a book, I think, at some point. I mean, we were married a long time, so I kind of forgot. But I think he bought a book and read some stuff, and then now his massages are pretty good. I mean, I enjoy them now, but it was a skill thing, right? You have to learn how to be an entrepreneur that is growth-oriented versus just your skill set of what you started your business around to make that transition and that change. So there's two ways to learn. You can learn through trial and error, and you can learn from someone else. So I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think most entrepreneurs do? How do they learn?
Trial and error.
That's right, trial and error. Because I think because they're workhorses, they're tenacious, they're hardworking, they're smart, they are overachievers a lot of times. They're like, I can learn this, I can figure it out. And that is true, they can. But here's the problem with trial and error. First of all, it's expensive because if you're not outlaying cash to go through trying different things, you're losing opportunities on the stuff that is working while you're going through that. But you also have this big enemy called time. And remember we talked about how 85% fail in the first 5 years? You don't have a lot of time to figure it out and beat that failure rate within the 5 or the 10. And especially if you wanted to maximize profitability, because that's what's offsetting and costing you. So yeah, trial and error and learning from someone else. So let's talk about learning a little bit. We've got this problem called information overload, which is even worse today than it's ever been before because of this awesome, wonderful thing called the internet, which I absolutely love because I love to learn. But you can't get to the end of the internet, first of all. There are 3,000 million podcasts and YouTube videos and downloads. You can bookmark, you can get binders, you can go to workshops, you can get seminars, you can learn all kinds of things. But then what do you do with it? How do you ascertain what is relevant to where you are right now? What should I put into play? What should I be doing? It's really hard to do. So it comes back to trial and error. Oh, I'll try this, I'll try that. All right? The other one is this thing called failure to implement. So we get all of this information, sounds really great, but then we get back to the real world and there's all kinds of fires and screaming and things going on and you just don't get to what you want to get to.
We call them curveballs.
Curveballs, right, right.
Adopted a new word.
Right. I like
Morale fires and all that.
it's like we need a new one because that one's getting mundane.
Right.
It just, yeah, it throws you a curveball and you're like, well, I'll get to that tomorrow, right? That's the famous last word. I'll do that tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes because of this failure to implement thing. And it's not a personal weakness as much as it is a difficulty and it's a reality. So how do you overcome that? So those are the three big things is you haven't learned how. Entrepreneurs haven't really learned what they need to know. On this other side, they have their what I call fulfillment. We're going to talk about all the functions of a business. But they have the fulfillment piece down, but then they haven't learned the growth piece, right? They have all this information. They have to kind of ascertain what's relevant, when and why, and where am I at right now, and what do I start with, and where do I go? And then the last one, which is doing something with it. So here's the keys to it. It's going through all that information, getting very focused, finding out what's relevant, what's actionable, and putting it together in a step-by-step system, which is what we're looking at second. And then overcoming that failure to implement through accountability. And that's a big one because entrepreneurs, as much as they are leaders and self-motivated, also don't have anyone oftentimes holding them accountable. Because your employees, if you have them, aren't going to call you out on it. Right? And oftentimes no one knows what you told yourself you're going to do. So if you don't get to it, nobody's really like, hey, why didn't you get to that? So that's a big piece for entrepreneurs themselves. So let's talk about what it takes then to build that ideal business. Well, the first one, and this is when we started talking a little bit about the sale of investors buying, is to make it so that it is saleable. So building an income-producing asset that can be sold is the first one. So that starts with the investor mindset, thinking with the end in mind. It's not just a day-to-day, like how do I get through today, what is our operational, what do I need to sell, what am I going to do, but really thinking about profit and cash flow. It's not about revenues, it's not about sales, it's not about number of customers, it's not about income or salary even. It's about profitability, net profit, which is what's at the bottom line. It's what's left over after all the other expenses have been paid. That's what's the most important thing to start thinking about when you're judging the success of the business. And then it's building it to achieve the outcome that you're thinking and want to accomplish versus just running it day to day. So that's the first step for creating a business that's saleable. And I like this little picture of the marathon because I think it's a good analogy when you think about, okay, I don't know if any of you guys have ever run a 5K, a half a marathon, a full marathon. Judy? No? No?
I did a full marathon.
You did a full one? Good for you. It's not, you don't just get up and run it, right? You train. Yeah, and you work your way up. And it kind of depends upon where you start. Like if you're running, if you're a runner and then you're like, I'm going to run a marathon, you're starting in a different place than if you've been sitting on the couch binge watching Netflix for a year, right? You got a different training pattern, different equipment that you need, different things you need to do. Same thing with a business. Where are you at determines where you're going to start, what you're going to do, and how long it might take you to get where you want to go. All right. So how do you build this ideal business that would be saleable? So first of all, you want to be scalable, which means that you can produce 2 widgets just as easily, you can produce 200 widgets just as easily as you can produce 2 widgets. So if you produce 200 and you start to implode and things start to crash and burn and curveballs come at you, then you're not quite scalable yet, right? So that's the first goal, is that you can do what you do at increasing levels. And the second one is predictable profit, which means that you know your numbers, you know your metrics, you know what profit's coming. And it comes down to how many prospects or customers did I talk to, how many bids did I do, and you know that that's going to generate X. So that now you're projecting forward based upon actions and activity what you're going to get at the end of the year. Not like what I said earlier when you just look at your tax return that your CPA put together for you and you go, oh, we lost money, or oh, we made that much. It doesn't blindside you. You know what's coming. And then autonomous is a really big one, which basically, it's a big fancy word that means that it can run without you or any one person. So, for example, my daughter might graduate from college and she comes back and she starts running my business for me, and now my husband and I can go to Europe for 2 weeks because that's what we've been dreaming about, and it's awesome and it finally can happen, so I've been training her to run the business. But let's say something happens to her, or she's like, hey mom, you know what, this isn't working out, I'm not really enjoying working for you. And she leaves and she goes and gets a job. Now what? I'm back to square one. So autonomous means you may not be able to replace somebody overnight because they're a very key position, but you can replace them in a relatively short period of time. You've got those systems and processes developed to do that. So that's important as well. All right. So the second piece, the first one was building it so it's saleable. The second one is build it to grow. And what we figured out, especially when I worked with the merger and acquisition world, was that the same things that make a company saleable are the same things that make it grow and make it profitable. And if you're going to own it, because you do, and you really have to start thinking of yourself as an investor who owns a business that you just happen to work in, if you're working in it full time, you're both roles. You're not just the owner working, you're the investor that owns it. Don't you want it to be profitable? Don't you want it to be something someone else would own because you own it, so you would want it to be that way. So there was we were talking about this 85% failure rate, but there was a guy about 60 years ago by the name of Ray Kroc who kind of figured out this thing called franchising businesses with the McDonald's program. And he put that into play, and it's one of the most successful business models that has ever been developed since. So we think if you're going to do something, start with something that works. So let's talk about the franchise model, because I'm going to stop, and a lot of times people will be like, well, I don't want to franchise my business. That's not what I want to do. But franchising isn't a kind of business. It's a mode of operation. It's a way you run your business. All right? So it's really designed around consistency and predictability, right? Every time you go into McDonald's, it doesn't really matter where you are unless you're in, India, then the hamburgers taste a little different. But if you're anywhere in the U.S., those hamburgers are going to taste identical, and your experience is going to be identical, and the layout of the store is going to be identical. There's 2 benefits for that. One, customer experience, which is huge. I know what I'm going to get, and I will go there because I know what I'm going to get. Even if it's a crappy hamburger, I'm going to go there because I know what I'm going to get. But the other side of it that's beneficial is operationally, it's much more profitable and easy to manage and replace a manager. I can take them from one store and pop them into another store without a hiccup because he knows everything that's going to happen. So the operational side and the profitability side is huge as well. And it's functional, and we're going to talk about functions of the business, but it means it's not like here's all the things we need to do and I'm going to give you 5 of them and I'm going to give you 10 of them. It's really looking at the different parts of the business and what you're trying to accomplish and running your business around each of those functions and then putting someone in charge of those functions versus just there's a ton of stuff to do, let's get it all done. All right? And so you've got documented workflows and tasks, and then to the point I was making earlier, really every business should be franchised in the fact that it should be systematized and structured to be run consistently and predictably no matter, and becomes more plug and play. And that's how you get that autonomous function, because other people can just step in and do it because of how well it's structured. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions? All right. So we kind of went through some of these, but why would you quote unquote franchise your business? Well, it dramatically increases the value. When we talk about investors that are looking at it, they're looking for systems and processes and consistency. It's easier to scale and to grow. It reduces those labor costs. One, because training becomes easy and it's documented, so your employees know what is expected. So HR becomes easier as well, right? And then it reduces that operational dependency on you, which is the most important one to reduce it on, but as well as any key people. It also reduces this thing called the hostage syndrome. Do you guys know what that is? When I call the hostage syndrome? It is when you have an employee that feels like they're so valuable and so important to your business that you can't fire them.
That's right, yeah.
You ever had one of those?
Yeah.
Yes, they're not fun, are they? And if you don't have this franchise...
It was true.
Yeah, oftentimes it is. That's why they get that mindset. But if you've got this franchise process set up, it's not so much true. And in the beginning, it may be painful to still let them go. It could be a little bit of a bite, but at least you can do it. Whereas some of them are like, you can't. And it might take you 6 months to bring somebody else in, and then they can sour the whole pot with all your other employees. And it's a bad, bad place to be. So that's a big benefit to this franchise systematized structured model. And it reduces the risk because we mentioned 85% of businesses fail, but franchises are flipped. 85% of them succeed. So why is that flipped? And it's because of this. It's because of this. And when you buy a franchise, they've built out their systems. They've flushed through it all. They have done the trial and error. They figured out what worked. By the time you're paying for it, and you're paying for it up front. But now you've got your risk is significantly lower because it already works. All you have to do is follow their systems. And the better you follow their system, the more successful you're going to be. So the franchisee owners that follow it to the T are usually the ones at the top tier, that when you go to the conventions, everybody's following them around going, how do I be just like you? Well, the simple answer is just follow the system that you bought. You bought it, so follow it. But you get personalities that think, well, I just want the name on the door, but I'm going to do it my way because I got my own style and that sort of thing. And then actually that reduces the success rate. And it's easier to hire, train, develop your team, again, because of consistency. And you can have someone else train them because they're just training them on exactly what they know versus the top dog has to do it over and over and over to each new hire. And back to that selling thing, it's faster and easier to sell when and if you're ready to sell or if someone approaches you to sell. And you may decide you never want to sell. You may say, oh, I'm going to hand this off to my children, right? But if that doesn't work out for some reason or they don't want it, which I talk to a lot of owners now that say, I always thought my kids would take it over, but then they didn't want to. They wanted to do their own thing, so then they're looking to sell. So it's easier to do that. And if somebody comes by and you decide you want to retire, you can do it and not have to take a year to get it in shape to sell or sell at a low price because you're not set up to be premium, to sell for a premium price, all right? So getting focused is the first step to all of that, right? And when you're focused, even as a small business, and really look at, and we're going to talk about kind of your uniqueness as a business, but you can really monopolize that niche if you really identify who you do business with well and who likes the way you do business and you're ideal for, you can really monopolize and you get much more profitable. So that's a huge benefit for being focused. So here's that little thing I was talking about, getting drilled in onto your uniqueness. I explained before that BI2G stands for Build It to Grow. This is our little acronym, but it's the niche builder triad, right? So we've got 3 parts to it, and the first one is this developing your unique customer focus. We have a module in the program called Investing in Innovation, and what that means is that you really identify what makes you unique in your marketplace. You identify your unique customer focus. Who is it that loves to do business with you, and who is it that you love to do business with? Because something there is jiving the way you do business. Maybe you're not the fastest painter in the world, but you're the cleanest, right? Or you're the politest, or you do the perfectest, what do you call those lines across the top, right? Across the wall, so you don't get it on the ceiling. Whatever it is, and those people that's really important to them, that's who you're going after. And I'm not saying that's that for you, I'm just trying to think something off the top of my head. But so that's the unique customer focus that you really drill in for your own unique business. Then the next piece that's super important is your sales message, which is articulating very, very well in a compelling way to your marketplace to get their attention, first and foremost, because there's so much out there. After Good Friday, Monday, what's the Monday called? Cyber Monday, between 2 a.m. when I cleaned out my inbox before I went to bed, and then at 11 when I got back to the office, it was Cyber Monday, 100 emails just from marketing people. There's no way in God's green earth, even if I didn't have anything to do that entire day, that I could go through 100 of those emails, even look at them, right? So this is the tremendous amount of marketing messages that we're getting pinged with on a daily basis. So you have to have a message that articulates and gets their attention for your ideal person. If you're trying to get everybody's attention, that's when you get lost in the noise. So you want to articulate that well to get their attention, to educate them, to get them to want to do business with you. And then the last piece is the strategic attraction. And that isn't just lead generation. That's not just marketing. It's being very, very smart about understanding who it is that you're trying to get their attention, how to say it, where they're at to say it well, and have all of those pieces come together. And when you do all 3 of those things super well, then you're getting focused and you can generate your leads, all right? So that's how you get real focused within your niche. All right, so what I want to do is I want to talk about, which is kind of the core of the Build It to Grow program, is what we call a growth engine and the strategy. But before I do that, I kind of want to go through Business 101 and go through the functions, because I told you when we were talking about franchises that you want to be a functional-based business. So there's 8 functions in every business, and this is what they are right here. And right in the center is leadership and vision. This is the role that what I call a growth-oriented leader, which is what the business owner wants to get to. And it's okay if you're also running the business, but you also need to know you need to be this role. And so many entrepreneurial businesses don't even realize how important this role is or ever take that on. So that's super important. So you have to start shifting and becoming this person, because nobody else can. You can't hire an intern to be your visionary and your leader, right? And maybe you could hire, if you're a big corporation, a CEO to do that, but that's a big corporation, right? So unless you are in a place where you can step out and hire in a president to run and be this person, that's you. It's got to be you. And then you've got all of these other functions. So everything from planning and sales and conversion, but they're broken into 2 parts, so I'm going to break them out. The first 4 are what we call sustaining growth or managing for growth. These are the things, remember when I was talking about before you grow too fast and you implode? Well, if you don't have these 4 things in place, this is where the implosion happens. So you have to have the finance and the asset protection going in and the planning around the financial part of it. You have to have your back office and operations running well to be able to support that scale. Now I'm making 200 widgets. If there's any cracks in my operations, everything falls apart. So I got to have that working well. Team development. Can I hire quickly because all of a sudden I just got 6 new jobs? How quickly can I bring on more team? And then that planning pulls them all together. So those are the 4 you got to have kind of humming to set that foundation. Once you have the foundation in place, now we can drive growth. And that's the growth engine. Those are the 4 functions that drive growth within the business. So we've got everything from attraction to conversion to fulfillment and customer development. That's the heart of the growth engine. So why do I call it an engine? Well, it's kind of like your car. You've got all these different components that make up your engine. Each component has to work well in and of itself. and then they all have to work together. And if any one breaks or has a problem, overall your car is going to have a problem. So if you think of that with your business and each of those functions, you've got to maintain each one of these. When you go into the shop, they're like, oh, you need to change a belt. Oh, you need to change a hose. You need to do whatever. I won't even pretend I know about cars. But my husband's family owns a car repair facility. So I fortunately, when I met him, handed the car off to him, and I don't have to think about it at all anymore. But I know my car in college had a leak in the brake fluid line. And I didn't have a lot of money in college, so I just carried around a bottle of brake fluid. And when my light came on, I just poured more in. I learned where that hole was, and I put it. And then he met me. He's like, oh, no. And I'm like, all right, because I didn't learn how to maintain cars. But let's look at that growth engine. We just went through this right here. That's your fuel, your unique thing. That feeds the engine, because every business has their own growth engine if they're running, managing it, and maintaining it. But everybody has their own unique fuel. And if you're putting the wrong fuel in, and you've got a high-performance car and you're putting in low-grade fuel, the performance of the vehicle suffers, at least long-term. I've been told that, too. I've got to put in the more expensive fuel. I'm like, oh, all right, oops, I'm going through this too quick. I don't want to do that. All right, so let's talk about the first one, attraction. This is the sales process. This is the traditional sales process. I need more leads. That's what I found when I started working for companies, helping them generate and automate their marketing. When they wanted to grow, they wanted more leads, right? But what I found is that there was so many more things that companies could do to grow and be more profitable that had nothing to do with marketing. The problem is they had hired us to come in and help them get better marketing. So it's really hard to go, wait, let's stop the presses and let's work on something else in your operations and your back office and other functions of your business when that's not what they hired you for. So I said, all right, let's build a program that addresses it all, right? So attraction is the first step, and then we convert, which basically means I'm going to come talk to you in a sales role, and I'm going to say, hey, here's what we do, and here's what we can do for you, and here's how much it costs, and do you want to hire us? And then if I do that right, there's two parts to it. There's a nurture process, and there's a sales process. Most companies just do this sales process, which is, all right, you called me, I call you back, I tell you how much we are, maybe I send you an email, and then I hope and pray that you will send me the A-OK or give me your credit card number. And then they forget this nurture process. Well, the nurture is the relationship development piece of the sales process, right? So if they're not ready to buy right now, then they kind of bump back to nurture. And then they might raise their head again a little bit later because their timing's right. And then I go into my sales role again. And I go back and forth until they're ready to buy. They never fall out of that loop. I call it a closed loop conversion because eventually they buy. Well, 20 years ago, I would say they buy, die, or move away, right? But now we're more of a global environment. So moving away may not necessarily matter. But if they're going to come to my tree house, David, then they probably need to live in the area, unless they're from LA and they're willing to jet in to have a tree house, which would be okay with you, I'm sure, right? But now they have this thing called opt-out, so they can opt out. They don't have to die to get out of your marketing system. But they can either buy or die or move away, all right? And then once they're ready to buy, they say yes, and then you fulfill, which basically means you deliver to them whatever it is that you said you would deliver and they want to buy from you. And from there, you get a little pot of gold. And that's only if you've priced it profitably. And that's another piece when we look at metrics, is that a lot of times small businesses don't look at all the expenses involved in attracting the lead, converting the lead, fulfilling the lead, so that when they get here, there's not very much left at all, if anything, right? So that's the first thing you have to do, is make sure that there's some money left over, not only to cover all the expenses, but to pay you as the owner, not for the job you did to fulfill. That's your compensation for doing it. But then as the investor and the owner of the business, there should be a little bit left over, because if you buy stock, you want it to be generating a dividend, right? That's what you have to think of your business as. So there's a little bit left for that, and then a little bit left to reinvest back in the business to drive more growth, so you can get more leads, blah, 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 right? But the second part of that is that you want the customer experience to be phenomenal, a wow experience. So that happens when you deliver to the customer what you said you'd deliver, when you said you'd deliver it, how you said you'd deliver it, where, and at the price you said you'd deliver it. Now that all seems to be common sense, right? Except for I'm hyper sensitive to it, and I see companies all the time that screw up at least one, if not more, of those things. So if you don't have that, then you damage their customer experience. And then you miss out on this thing called develop, which is super important because that's where the huge pot of gold is. And the reason that's big is because all those expenses I had to attract that customer for the first time and to convert them, I don't have to spend that again in order to resell something to them. I'm upselling, cross-selling, you know, like for example with massage, they might come back once and now you sell them a package to come back once a month for a year, right? You didn't have to generate them again, you didn't have to talk to them about it. They had a great experience, said, I love this treehouse experience, I love your massages, they're great, and I'm gonna get one for my mother-in-law for Christmas. And you're like, hot dog, because now I've got this thing called referrals, right? Now she's a customer. But it all comes back to doing this. But this is important. You got to make sure it's profitable because selling more and more and more at an unprofitable level is only going to dig the grave of your business faster. So that's why that part's important to have two pieces. All right? Now, that's the traditional process. Attract, convert, fulfill, develop. But there's a very strategic process to all of this. And it's not in that order. So I'm going to go through that. It starts with your dashboard. That's your metrics. So when I was talking a little bit about the financials, it's looking at your profitability, first of all, just on fulfillment. But dashboard being how many leads am I attracting and how many of those are converting. So if I run an ad in the lifestyle magazine and I get 10 leads, did I convert one of them or did I convert 3 of them? But if I've got this working really well, over time, if I start to develop a nurture process, I might, over a year, convert 3 instead of just 1, right? So the first thing is looking at metrics in your dashboard. Then we go and we look at fulfillment. We want to work on this function of the sales engine first and the growth engine, because if I don't have a wow experience and it's not profitable, there's no reason to be spending any time on any of those things until I've got that humming well. The next thing to look at is the development, because I already got a lead. How do I get what's called more wallet share from them? That's the cross-selling, the upselling, and the repeat business, as well as the referrals. So I'm not spending another dime here yet, but I can maximize that lead and the value there here by doing those things well. Once I've got that working very well, now I look at conversion. So now you guys see the pattern here? I'm working backwards. Now I look at conversion. So every lead I have coming in, how do I maximize how many I convert to a sale over time? And finally, when that's done, now I attract. And everyone I attract, because I got this all working really well, is far more valuable. So my return on advertising dollars spent goes up significantly over the lifetime of that lead. Any thoughts or questions? No?
Great analogy.
Say that, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Great analogy.
Thank you. Yeah, this is the heart of it. This is kind of a proprietary diagram that we put together that's part of the program. But I think this is really powerful because when you spend your time in that order. Now, with that being said, so there's a very specific order, and that's your job to systematize and optimize those functions in this order. Feedback, then, I clipped through that really quick? I did. Feedback, fulfillment, customer development, conversion, and then attraction. In that order, but just do one at a time. Because, again, back to focus. You don't, of course, we're excited. We want to do them all, but then you do a little bit of everything. And if you do it in that order, you're going to get the maximum results. Now, that doesn't mean you stop selling, you stop attracting leads. You don't pull your ad out of Judy's magazine by any stretch. But, and if somebody calls and says, hey, you know, I want to get some information about hiring you, you don't say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm working on fulfillment right now. We're polishing our back office operations and procedures, call me next month. Certainly, that's not the option. But it's just where do you focus your energy, because you only have so much. You only have so much resources. Even if you're a large Fortune 500 company, you only have so much resources. You have a lot more than the average entrepreneur, but you only have so much. So how do you use those and leverage them to optimize them? And that's it. All right. So that brings it to the build it to grow and your next step, which is basically stay the course, what you're doing right now, right? And if it's not broke, then you don't want to fix it. Or you do something different. That's how you get different results. You learn something different, you do something different. So that's why you had the trial and error and learn from someone else. So the Build It to Grow program was designed to teach. That's it. For the people that wanted to go this route, to learn it from someone else. All right? So just kind of going back to the 3 things we looked at earlier, when we put it together, we said, all right, let's take all this information, my decades of experience. It started when I was 9, so unfortunately I've got about 4 decades of experience now under my belt of entrepreneurial family businesses and all of that, and kind of put it in relevant into step by step, and what do you do first and what do you do next, and put it into this roadmap that we kind of went through just on the driving growth side of things, right? When we built the program out, the first phase is called sustaining growth or managing for growth, and then we go through all that foundational stuff. Then we get to the driving growth stuff. Now, I always laugh because this is the sexy part. This is what everybody wants. I want more customers, I want more sales, I want more profits. Profits will come by doing the foundational stuff, right? But if you don't have that in place, then when you try to do this too soon, you implode, or you just spin your wheels. The big piece is right here. You can spin your wheels. You can have a lot more of this coming through, but this is where you just kind of spin out and not go anywhere, because what you really want to do is get here, but you won't get there if you're just driving in more business and not working on it in this order. And then the failure to implement, huge, 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 right? So in the program, what we designed were peer groups of other growth-oriented entrepreneurs to hold you accountable. So you basically, the definition of accountable, I always think of as you do what you're supposed to do. You're responsible, but it's not that as much as it's just accounting for or telling someone what you've done. So even if you've done nothing, you're accountable if you say, I said I was going to do it, but I didn't do it. And you feel kind of schmucky, right? But it makes you feel bad, right? So you're less likely to not do what you said you're going to do because you've told others that you're going to do that. So in the program, we have a membership level where we meet on a monthly basis with others, and we mastermind, we brainstorm, we collaborate, and then we do workshop, which gives you a focus away from the office time where you can just get stuff done. So they're 3-hour meetings. The first half we're masterminding, the other half we're just quiet time. Everybody's working on their stuff, but then we've got each other to ask questions, which is important because you have others that get it, right? Because your employees don't. They just think you're made of money. Everything's great. All right. So here it is. It's online. All the education's online. The videos are online. All of the handouts are all now based online. When we first started developing it, we did it in live workshops just like this. But I wanted to make it available for everyone outside of a certain locale where that individual, like, you know, I didn't have to show up to do the presentation. I would videotape it, and then you could watch it or make a PowerPoint presentation out of it. Community basis, I talked about, there's 15 modules, 1 per month. So it's about a 1.5-year long program. And then at the end, we start mastery. So we have our program members that then get done doing the 15, and they're like, I'm not going anywhere. I want to keep being involved in the program. So we developed a mastery program, and we just keep going through it. So that's what that is. So basically, as you go, you go through it, you organize, it's managing for growth, you're creating your growth engine, working through that, and you're basically looking to drive growth, but more important than that, profitability. And you're systematizing and you're strategizing. So I get coined a lot of times as like, I love systems, which I do because they're powerful. And they sound dorky and boring, but they're really not, because actually they take a lot of stress off. Even if you're just a one-man band, if you work from systems and processes and punch lists, your brain just relaxes, because you don't have to worry about, did I do that, did I not, did I do it right, because it's all right there and you just work from the punch list. But it's more about strategy than systems, because you can systematize a bad strategy or a bad operation, and that doesn't do you any good. So you really have to think through first, what is it that I want to accomplish? What's the best way to do that? Try that. Flesh it out, see if it's working well, and then systematize it, polish the system. And systems are living beings. It's not a one and done. You're always modifying them, right? One of the franchises I owned was a Jimmy John's. And there was a system for making the tuna. Have you ever had a tuna fish sandwich from a Jimmy John's? It was how long you press the tuna. 15 seconds. Down to that level of systems. And at one point we got from the corporate office a change in how long you press the tuna. And now we had to start pressing the tuna twice. So you pressed the tuna once for 15 seconds, you did something, I don't know, you came back and you pressed it again for another 10 seconds. Now, why do you think that would be that important? Any guesses?
I want a soggy tuna sandwich.
Some people like soggy tuna sandwiches, some people like dry. Doesn't matter which one it is, it's consistency. Jimmy himself wanted a super dry sandwich. So we pressed it twice. And I guess there was some failure in the system. We call those system busters, where it wasn't being done right. So they implemented another level of tuna pressing into the system. All right? And we had to change out our operation manual. That page came through, and then you had to change it out. We had to keep that operations manual in a safe, away from the general public. And people would come in and pretend they were from the corporate office to steal operation manuals from stores. And then we get the warning, like, don't be tricked. Someone's coming around trying to steal the operations manual. That's how valuable those are. And you pay a lot of money for that up front. And then if you don't follow that, and you have enough things against you over time, they will take your franchise away from you. They don't buy it back from you, they take it away from you. And that's how important their consistency and their processes and their systems are to their overall brand. Because if you own a store and I own a store and you're jacking around and not doing it, and you're down the road, around the corner, or even a state over, ultimately, if there's enough of them doing that, that's going to affect me. People won't come into my store because they had a bad experience in your store. And same thing if you own multiple locations within your business and one store is not following your systems and one is, it affects everybody. All right? So there's monthly videos, exercise lessons, tools and resources, support and accountability. That's the huge one. And I always encourage everybody to do the membership level with the groups because I see so much more success and results from that level where you're interacting with other people than just trying to do it on your own. I really developed the other virtual one for people outside of the St. Louis market area that just can't come to St. Louis. Unless they're jetting in from LA like your treehouse guy. That is.
Those group meetings are here?
Yes, we actually hold them across the hall in a smaller room. We don't usually have this big of a room, but this was the only one that was available that they could give us. All right. So that's it. So if you guys want some more information on that program, if you've already texted the BI2G to that number, then text the word more. And then we're getting ready to launch another group in February, on February 1st. And I'm going to do some special promos just to people who text more, that say they want more information. So if you send that to that 314-300-0378 number, then we can make sure that you get that information. But that's it. What questions can I answer for you guys today?
Do you actually go into the business and look at the workings of it, meet with employees, see what we are already implementing, what we've done in the past, what my thoughts are in the future, and kind of break it down?
I do, and I can. So actually, and I don't usually talk about a whole lot, but we have a third membership level that kind of has a combination of that. It's like we'll come in and work with the team to help implement and develop it within the organization itself versus it being more that the entrepreneur's doing it just themselves. And learning and then implementing. So it kind of gives that third level of a hybrid.
So at the beginning, would it be a sit down like you and I discussing, I mean, how would you, because I mean, I looked into your company before I showed up here, like where would the initial stages begin? What does that look like?
Well, I'm going to make sure I understand your question to analyze where you're at as an organization.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of it, you touch base on a lot of things that we're doing, that we have done, where we want to go. Yes, I'm the only one that knows it, so the accountability part has always been where I've always seen that.
Yeah. We can sit down and just do a little growth session if you like, and then talk about that and figure out what makes sense. A lot of the members that are in the Build It to Grow program, as I said, kind of just get started with the very first module. The very first module is standalone. I set it up to be that way. It's called Setting the Foundation for Growth. So it's just like the other 15 modules, but they'll go in and they'll just do that module.
And that's online?
It's online. The video's online. So the reason I set the videos up to be online is so that if you remember I said earlier, I'm not a morning person, so I might watch a video at 1 at night because it's quiet and I've got time to myself and the emails aren't flying in and whatever. So I can finally get to that. Somebody else might be up at 6 in the morning and that's their perfect time to do it. So what I got, the feedback from entrepreneurs was we would do workshops like this and go through all the content live, and then they go back with their work packets to work on everything, because every module has, here's how you go through the concepts that we just talked about and evaluate it for your business, exactly what you're talking about. There's work packets to do that. And then there's homework for what I call putting it into practice. So these are the exercises you do right now in your business for this concept to get the ball rolling. So those are part of that, and those are all downloads. But we would give those out and say, okay, now go work on your work packets. But the feedback I kept getting was, when I go back to the real world, I don't have anybody to ask questions, right? Like, what does this mean, or how does this apply to me? So, right, and then I don't always get to those packets because I don't have the time and I get distracted, the accountability kind of thing, or the focus, the failure to implement, the opposite of failure to implement, they're failing to get it done. So that's why I said, let's put the video up online. You can watch it on your time. You don't necessarily have questions while you're watching. If you do, you can jot them down. And then when we're in a workshop environment and you're working on the packets, I'm here to answer questions, or someone else you can brainstorm with them who's sitting next to you. And now, since we started the program about 5 years ago, now we have a Facebook forum that's private where you can collaborate real time. So we've developed that tool too. So that helps answer some of those questions. But that's why I flipped it. Well, that's why I put the videos online, just to make it accessible to everyone. And then the workshops for talking it through. But we can also sit down and look at kind of a global overview of your company as well and kind of figure out and talk one-on-one on some of these pieces. And you can say, yeah, this is something we've done and we're doing really well. Here's someone we've tried to do and we're spinning our wheels or something like that, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
So you're primarily working with local businesses, statewide businesses, regional, nationwide?
So primarily local in the St. Charles and St. Louis area is what I've been working on. But I've got a client in Tennessee, and I've got a client in Florida.
Primarily local?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. But because now it's cloud-based, now when I start marketing, and my marketing effort, again, being very focused, is I'm going outward. Now I've got one client down in Springfield, Missouri, who actually her significant other lives in Rochester, New York. So she's out there and she's like, I want to start representing and showing this to people in Rochester. So I expect that later this year that we might get some clients out in New York. But that's not a primary focus of my marketing effort right now. Yeah.
I want to thank you all for coming on
Yeah.
behalf of St. Charles County Lifestyle. And just so you know, I've been involved with Danette and her program from the very beginning, really. Been watching and being implemented because we were kind of one of the very first with the magazine that I was with Streetscape magazine, a local, privately owned magazine, a local publisher, Tom Hannigan, for 12 years. I was with them, and probably the last 3 of those years, up until I started this magazine, we were doing this program. And mainly I say we as in me. The owner, he's not very hands-on. He's like, yeah, Judy, you go do that, and you just let me know what we need to do. So I've been through the program, and it's more cloud-based now. I did it really in person over here every month, I guess, for a couple of years. And so, I mean, I can vouch for Danette and the system. I think you can feel really good about it. So I just wanted to, every few months I do something with the magazine with my advertising partners to do like a networking function, or this is the first time I've done a workshop, and because Danette came up with the idea, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all about it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll do something again in a few months. Like I said, maybe more of a casual networking type thing, and then my first anniversary party, I'm going to be hosting in probably late March, so you'll be getting as yet, but thank you all for coming in. I hope you got something out of it. Whether or not you continue with the program, I hope that you got something just out of the hour long. Get you thinking anyway.
Yes.
Right? And,
thank you, guys.
So yeah, you guys can stick around.
Yeah, have some more coffee.
That's brain a little bit more.
So what are your books over
Yeah.
That's the program. So that's the binder on the left is the first 15 modules and then the mastery is the binders that follow. Oops. Oh, you're lucky. I don't think anything's spelled. And then there's one binder right there just for strategic planning.
It's free.